let's just chat for a sec. Will you fill me in kind of on your history, where you got started with entrepreneurship, and how Homie came to be?
Yeah, so I graduated from BYU, Idaho, and I had no prospects when I graduated. I had a best friend that was at BYU, and he invited me to help him co-found a software company called Property Solutions.
Okay.
It's become Entrada.
Okay.
So Entrada's right above Adobe.
Yep.
So I was there for 12 years and grew it, and it's a $1 billion company. It's just, it's been insane. It was amazing growth. But just randomly after 12 years, we were on a rocket ship, and I just decided to step aside and shocked my partner, shocked myself, shocked my wife, and just said, it's time to do something new, and had no clue. Went and interviewed with a bunch of VCs around here and other entrepreneurs, just trying to get an idea of what do I want to do next? And one of the ideas that was presented to me was Homie. And so I kept stewing on that, and eventually felt like that was the best decision and the next step for me, and chose to start Homie in 2015 with the guy whose idea it was, is Mike Peregrini. He's now my co-founder.
Oh, brilliant. And
then I brought in one of my old co-founders from Entrada.
Oh, wow.
So that's our little crew.
So brought it all back full circle.
Brought it full circle.
What ended up inspiring that change? It sounds like it kind of came out of nowhere for you to leave Entrada and start Homie. Was there any kind of defining moment in your life, a moment like spiritually, emotionally, financially, anything that led to that switch?
None.
There just came out of the blue.
It was 100% out of the blue, and it was crazy.
Interesting.
And it was a Wednesday night in December. So, 2014, I can't remember, maybe it was like December 2nd, December 3rd, but just told my wife, I said, I think I need to move on. I think I need to leave. And I didn't want to tell my co-founders. And so I didn't say anything, but I felt so much pressure and so much clarity. And so I didn't do anything. And then the next night was a Thursday night, and I just felt even more pressure, and I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So I just went into my co-founders and talked to both of them and just said, hey guys, I'm leaving. And they thought I might be going to a competitor because it was so out of the blue. So they had me sign this long non-compete, and I'm like, I'll sign anything. I'm not going anywhere.
It's not like that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do next. And so I said, I think I can stay for a few months to help transition and hire and backfill me, whatever needs to occur. And so, I set a date of, 2 months from then of when I would finally be done. And just proceeded. So it was really out of the blue. No,
incredible.
Nothing spiritual, nothing just, anything that made that occur.
Incredible. So then you moved into Homie and started building this company from the ground up, pretty much, right? What were the company values that you established early on, and which ones have carried on to now that have helped Homie be so successful?
Yeah, so at Entrada, 7 years into the company, we didn't have company values. We didn't really have a focus on culture or strategy, strategy around culture, excuse me. And so we came out with a set of values, and I saw the difference it made at Entrada by establishing core values. So when we started Homie, I told my co-founders I was so passionate about it, so we came out with 5 values. Well, I helped come up with 5 values. They agreed to them. But after a few years, I noticed they weren't sticking at the company. And I was like, what's going on? We had these values, and they were so impactful. Well, what had happened at Entrada was we got a group of leaders together from the company, not necessarily just managers, with titles, but leaders in the organization. And they helped create the values. We listed out all the things that were going well with the company and all the things that weren't going well. And we built values around those that were going well to keep those going well.
Right. And
we built values around the things that weren't going well to eliminate those and make improvements. And as I thought about it, I just thought this was a one-man show in creating our initial values. So we had a group of people at Homie get together, and they formed a values committee. They went off, did a 2-day offsite. And I just said, look, scrap them all. Scrap all the values. Let's create something that we're going to stick with. And they were a little hesitant. They thought, no, Johnny's really tied to these. So I think it was hard for them. But they did end up keeping 2 of the 5 values. And then they added 2 new ones. So the values that they kept were Homie's got your back. which is our value of loyalty.
Okay.
And there's, with that phrase, homie's got your back, you can create a different definition under it instead of it just being the value of loyalty, and a definition already exists.
Right.
So there's a lot more to that value. And it's been really interesting. One of the new ones they came up with was the value of disruption. And that was one we were already living, but it wasn't cemented. And a lot of people that were joining us joined because of the disruption we were causing this industry. They wanted to be part of it. And it's not just the definition of disruption. It was the status ain't quo. That's the phrase. So such an ability to define underneath that phrase. And then we have the value of humility. That one stuck. That one was one that was original. And that was check yourself. That's the phrase there. And so none of us want to work with jerks, right? And so that one stayed in place. And then a new one that they added was the value of balance. And that one's called fight for your right. In that it's something you can't just ask the company, like, help me with my balance. Like, you have to set your own boundaries. Yeah. You could work all night if you wanted to. There's endless amounts of work. So those were the 4 values that came from that meeting. Loyalty and humility came through from our first 5, but then the other 2 of balance and disruption came through, and I couldn't have asked for a better foundation for our company. And this was it was created by our own people.
Right.
So it stuck, and that's where we are today.
I love that you mentioned that it was created by your own people, and that's why it stuck. I think that's really important. I also love the value of balance. And I think we are all facing a lot of different issues of balance right now, right? In our lives and in the workplace. And so what are some ways that you as a leader at Homey have helped establish methods of balance as employees work from home or face these different transitions?
Well, I think the main way I've helped is by trying to lead by example instead of being a hypocrite.
Sure.
I think as the CEO, if you have a bunch of values and you're not, and nobody would describe you as any of them, you're the chief hypocrite officer.
Sure.
And so, with balance, even going back to starting Homey, my wife didn't really care what I did after Entrada. She's like, look, as long as you don't sacrifice me and the kids, that's all. That was her boundary. And so she said, that's what's important. And so to me, I've been trying to live that and say, look, in one of our definitions under work-life balance, under balance, is that you work to live. You don't live to work.
Right.
That you can hustle at work, but then you go home and you hustle. I'm a full-time dad. I'm a full-time husband. Mm-hmm. Those, being the CEO of Homey is just one of my jobs. It's not, that doesn't define me. There's so much more that I have to do. So living as an example has been hard. And I haven't always done it. I've made some mistakes. Some of my employees have seen that I haven't put my family first in certain situations. They've seen, and I know they've seen it, so that's where I have to come back, humble myself, let everybody know, look, this is what's important, and continue just to try to lead by example. I think that's the most important thing.
I love that. And I also have read one of your company values is leadership doesn't need permission. Yes. And it sounds like a lot of what you do really starts from the top down, leading by example and sending that from the top down, right? So how do you then encourage your employees in other ways to be leaders without necessarily being, say, promoted into a management position or a leadership position specifically, but just leading without permission?
Yeah, the leading without permission it's an interesting one. And all of them have to tie together. All these values really tie. Because if somebody's not humble and they just go around leading without permission, they need to check themselves. They're gonna be in danger.
Right,
and so that one, all the new hires that we have, we let them know, like, look, disruption is a core value. And whatever you are bringing from your company that could improve us from your former experience, share it. Let us know. Always question ourselves. And I'll typically share a couple examples that some decisions I've made based on pride. Again, going to the value of humility and saying, look, my pride got in the way. It wasn't until so-and-so questioned me And they led. They were like, nope, this is the way to do it. We're going this way. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That is the right way. And I've had to get out of my own way. And so sharing some of those examples, like, please come in, please join us, please lead by, lead without permission. You know what's best in so many instances, especially if we're hiring you because of your talents, your skill set.
Right.
Like, you're the expert, in whatever role we're bringing you in on. So to me, that's been one of the most helpful things to do, is just right off the bat at the new hire training, sharing examples of how we've disrupted ourselves following that value.
I love that. Would you mind sharing a specific example of an employee who has been disruptive per se, in a positive and leadership kind of way?
I can think of a couple just from this conversation, like the values in and of themselves, like that whole values committee, they didn't all have VP titles. It was made up of people who volunteered. People who just decided to lead, and it was people from all different divisions. And we wanted that. We didn't want it just to be some executive decision on the values. So every one of those people that joined that values committee stuck their neck out, and they did additional work. It wasn't on their job responsibility.
Right. And
they chopped 3 of my core values, and I got to say it hurt. It did.
Sure.
I'm not going to fake it. So that was a little painful, but it was the right thing to do. And then another example is the way that we were building our business. We were trying to copy Apple in terms of our customer support. Like you just do everything via technology. We're going to automate everything about buying and selling a home. Well, the truth is, it's one of the most emotional transactions, if not the most emotional transaction of your life. And so we went from being so cold and tech-driven to almost a trained group of therapists that are realtors helping you buy and sell a home.
Sure.
It's like we flipped it. And that came from our realtors who had, they've had decades of experience, and they were just like, Johnny, hey, a lot of good things you've thought of, a lot of good things are going on, but you're getting this wrong.
Yeah.
And so they led and challenged the status quo, which is that value of disruption.
I love that. So talking more along the lines of disruption, right now there's a huge topic of diversity and inclusion, right? And it's become more of a hot topic and a very in-your-face conversation over the last year or so. So if you were building a house of diversity and inclusion, what do you use as your foundation?
So the foundation for me for diversity and inclusion and for any of our values, it's all come down to mental health. And it's all been everything that goes through our heads. So all of us have different experiences. I don't know,
absolutely.
Where were you born and raised?
Utah.
Okay. I was born and raised in Colorado, a little town, Pueblo, Colorado. My dad moved us to Montana. I then became a farm boy. But like my life shaped my perceptions and opinions.
Absolutely.
My parents have shaped my perceptions, their parents. And so to me, starting to actually recognize what I think and why I think the way that I do, like that has helped me understand diversity and inclusion. It's helped me narrow into, do I think I'm better than other people because of my skin color?
Right.
Or do I think I'm less than because I idolize people that aren't my skin color? Like I grew up idolizing Will Smith and Kobe Bryant. I moved to Philly partly because of that. I was like, these guys are my heroes.
Sure,
yeah. West Philadelphia born and raised. And then, Kobe grew up in Lower Merion. I moved to Upper Merion. So I'm
Love
like,
it.
But my childhood, I had these defining moments and thoughts. And so as I've come to recognize the value of humility is being confident in who you are in your own skin and knowing like you're not better than any other individual. And there's a lot, racism is all about being better than. It's I'm better than and they're less than.
Yeah.
And so to me, if every single individual could really get inside their own head, question why you think the way that you do, and really dig into your own mental health, like this is what's been so life-changing for me, is to understand like the second I go into better than, I'm in insecurity.
Right.
And there's fear behind insecurity.
Oh, absolutely.
And so then there's the fear of I don't know you. I don't know where you're born and raised. You look different than me, like
Right.
in that fear then causes me that insecurity, which then I act on that insecurity. So if I can recognize that I'm scared and recognize that I'm insecure, I can start to heal that and move past that and come back to humble, which is confidence and not insecure. So everything, the foundation for my life has become fixing what's up here and really continuing to stay present and connected.
Incredible. I love that. So as we are all on this journey of staying present and connected and humble and eager to learn, right? How do we initiate change and education within the workplace today?
This has been one of my primary goals as a CEO. I feel that as a leader, I have an obligation to help others be vulnerable, to help others express their feelings. I grew up, again, that farm boy and a cowboy style where I was told to cowboy up, man up, not talk about my feelings. The best way I believe I can help answer that question is to teach people to recognize their feelings. So if they can recognize their feelings, they can then understand their thoughts.
Right.
And that's when you can start to change and get rid of stigmas. And regardless of who comes to my company and works with me and helps me disrupt this industry, helps be a partner in this business, they can walk away being a better human being by learning these principles and learning these concepts. So to me, that's the best way to lead.
Sure, and that's a huge investment into your people as well, so that people really do leave or stay homey better than they came, which I think is a great investment into our community. So thank you for that.
I think that's the definition of success, right?
Yeah.
It's just helping to become a better person. It's not the zeros in your bank account.
Absolutely.
It's growth. And that's our focus. And I think in turn, that then brings the financial success if we're all united in that same vision.
Absolutely. I love that. So this year, employers have had to come face to face with multiple elements that threaten to cause or aggravate mental health challenges in the workplace. Now more than ever, we need an employer-led response. How has Homey invested in, provided resources and training for, and built a culture around helping employees navigate mental health challenges?
Yeah, this one, I love that this is becoming more of a focus. So we actually rolled out a mental health program about 1.5 years ago.
Brilliant.
And so what I had come to recognize is that drama exists in every workplace.
Absolutely.
So drama is all in our heads. And if you could eliminate drama, you could be more effective. You could communicate better.
Sure.
You can get more stuff done. There's less backbiting, less fear of going to work and being around that certain individual. And there's so much drama. And what I recognized is this has got to be having an effect on people's home life. And I knew that to be true from my own experience. If I got in a fight with my partner, bring it home. And I'd have to come in the door and talk to my wife and be like, hey, this is what occurred. And then the kids would be like, hey, Dad. I'm like, not now.
Right. Frustration is still
I'm
there.
talking to your mom. I have to,
Right.
Yeah, I could set the phone down all I want, but I'm still at work in my head because of the drama. Well, the same is true with our personal situations. You might have somebody in your family dying of cancer. You might have who knows what. I mean, now in where we are with COVID and the economy and the election and all of this crazy that's going on, people are bringing drama to work and it slows us down. So it's become a foundational focus for us. It's now foundational under our values. It teaches us how to live our values. So that training we went through, we trained our executive team, our mid-management team, and then the whole company with the same vernacular so we all can speak the same language that's, common to therapy. And so we have really direct conversations using this language. And the challenge has been with new hires, keeping them apprised. We recorded all the trainings. They're not the same. So we're still figuring things out. We're still writing our mental health playbook. But I'm glad we rolled out what we did 1.5 years ago. It prepped us and I think, really helped us to become more mentally strong for situations like what we're living in.
I love that. It's incredible that you rolled it out a year and a half ago, well before many of our recent events had taken place, right? Kind of ahead of the curve there. So what exactly in these trainings did you cover? And what are you training employees on now as far as mental health challenges go?
So I think the best way to explain what we learned is to tie them back to our values.
Okay.
Because they really are foundational. And I think anybody that has a set of company values, you could look at them and understand, okay, how does mental health help me live those? So for example, humility, we talked about that. Like if you think of these new hires, a lot of the new hires might come in thinking, I got this job, I'm going to rock it, and being a little overconfident, a little egotistical, and really that's insecurity and there's fear. Now on the flip side, they could be like, ooh, they just hired me. They don't know who I am. Am I even capable? And that's the insecurity on the other side. That's the less than. And so that, helping them get to true humility is knowing, look, we hired you and we think you're capable of learning. And you should come into this role feeling confident that we're going to teach you. And that your past skills got you here, and we're going to teach you new skills. So the value of humility has been really a strong one when it comes to mental health. I would say the value of balance as well. You have to set your own boundaries. And boundaries is a big mental health topic. Brené Brown talks about it. A lot of other therapists hammer that. And you can blame the company, you can blame others on your balance, but it all comes down to you and saying, you can tell your clients, look, I'm going home. I can talk to you tomorrow at 8 a.m., as soon as I come in. So it's about setting expectations, having boundaries. That's balance. I would say loyalty is our other value. And that one is all about self-care and self-love.
Right.
And there's so much around that. And there's been, we had different weeks where we learned these topics and principles and just went deep on each one of them. So those are a few examples.
I love that. So it sounds like one of your strategies is providing this training to all of your employees, yes? And making sure you're all speaking the same language and on the same educational path as it comes to mental health challenges. So what other strategies has your company implemented to better support the mental health of your employees, if there are others?
Yeah, every Wednesday I hold a Mental Fitness Wednesday hour-long session from noon to 1, so anybody can join it. We talk about all issues at work or home. People can bring up, random scenarios and saying, if this, or this occurred with a friend, and we talk through it. And it just having people listen and validate each other is healing. And so that hour has been really helpful. We also just recently rolled out Zenovate. I've been friends with Amelia Wilcox. She's had this company for a long time where she did massages for businesses. Well, she's come in and she's added yoga. She's added, meditation. She's added counseling, therapy, coaching.
Interesting.
And so there's other programs that people can sign up for to just get additional help and resources. And I'm proud of what she created. She pivoted really hard for COVID with not being able to give massages in person. So this is now a great new solution for companies to get all of this through Zoom.
Brilliant.
And there's more to come. We're still learning how to deal with life and what's going on, but all of those things have been extremely beneficial so far.
Sure. And I'm sure as things are continually changing and people are feeling all kinds of different emotions and going through different life changes, all of these programs and strategies will continue to be beneficial for each employee. I really like the hour meeting every Wednesday, right? Have there been any stories that stood out to you or experiences that you personally had because of this hour meeting that ended up being a positive experience and had a positive result because of the power of listening?
So many examples. I can think of two examples that you wouldn't necessarily tie, I think, to mental health directly, like thinking about it, but these two individuals talked to me about this. One of them recognized he was in drama, and he had accused another employee of doing something that they didn't do, and he went around gossiping about that individual. Well, part of this mental health training is to be honest, being honest, humble, and responsible. Those were the 3 pillars of this mental health training, and he wanted to be honest, so he called me up, and he said, Johnny, I I know we don't know each other that well, but I want to let you know I wasted a lot of company resources and I caused a lot of drama. And he went on to explain that he went and gossiped this individual to their boss, to their peers. And I was shocked that he was telling me this. I'm like, well, okay, this is terrible. And I said, well, so what? And he's like, well, I'm happy to face any consequence. So he was taking responsibility.
Absolutely.
He was owning up to it. And I said, well, have you let this individual know that you gossiped about them? He's like, yes, I went to them. I told them everything I did. I also let that person know that I went to each individual and I apologized and let them know that was not true, that I was wasting time. I was in drama. And to me, like that type of honesty, man, I don't know how many things are hidden that people don't want to share because there's not an atmosphere of safety and trust. But because I've been so vulnerable about my own weaknesses and my own mistakes that I've made at the company and in life, he was willing to open up to me. So I think you have to lead by example, but my vulnerability allowed him to come and share that.
Sure.
And there was another individual who just came out of the blue and let me know, that at work they were checking ESPN more frequent than they felt that they ought to. And that they felt they were wasting company resources. And they wanted to be honest, and they wanted to clean it up, and they wanted to heal, and they felt, it was an addiction that they were going back to ESPN instead of, and because of that distraction, they weren't as focused on the job that they were supposed to accomplish.
Sure.
And it's things like this that I'm like, okay, this isn't just benefiting us individually. Like, that's great, but it's not all altruistic. Like, there's benefits that affect your company from a bottom line standpoint.
Absolutely.
And those were two examples where I'm like, I should roll this out years ago. Like, the company would be so much more successful if people weren't abusing company resources, time, money. And these were two examples of individuals that have stopped that behavior and they've made changes. Yeah. And because they took responsibility and they felt the guilt, they aren't going to go back and repeat those same behaviors, especially knowing that I now know, like they came and cleaned it all up, and it was remarkable.
I love that. And I think that really goes to show the power of leading without permission, because as you led by example, they then felt they had the support to be leaders and step forward, right? And no one gave them permission to do that, but they stepped up to the plate and did that on their own. And I think that's a really, really cool example of how the homie culture is fed from the top down. Okay, what advice would you give to companies just now beginning to implement supportive protocols as far as mental health goes?
Yeah, I think part of my mental health, like, had I not understood any of these things and still had a stigma like most people have, the first thing that I would be feeling is worry. Like, anything that I don't know that's unknown to me, I have fear around. That's been my history. And so I would be like, well, I don't even know the first thing. I'm not going to roll out a mental health program, or I don't even want to step into this. This sounds crazy because of the stigma. But the truth is, every single one of us struggle. We all have stresses. We all have anxiety. We all feel feelings of overwhelm. And so those are all common things where you can work on your mental fitness. Like, I think typically we associate it with suicide, and we're like, oh, you're suicidal? It's like, no, just like
It's not always on that level.
It's not always on that level. Yeah. Like, you're not always running a marathon when you tell people you're working out.
Sure.
You might have just done, a few sit-ups or gone on a walk, so it's the same thing with mental fitness. Like, you can start small. So don't feel overwhelmed. Like, there's not any reason to. And if you really dig, you can be vulnerable about any stressful job you've ever had and say, hey, everybody, like, I felt stress in this job, or I felt stress in other jobs, and I want to share with you guys that I'm not perfect, and I've made mistakes. So you can lead with little examples. And I think really, if you can just create an environment of safety and trust where people can listen, and you listen as the leader, and you validate others in their stress, in their struggles, and you can just have some empathy, like, that is the beginning of a wonderful mental health program.
I love that. Validation, empathy, and fear. Those are super, super great. What dynamics and challenges do you see other leaders facing as they approach the challenges of mental health?
I think it is the question of uncertainty, just because in this Western society that we live in, you don't talk about your feelings.
Right.
That's not tough. That's not strong.
Right.
And so you tuck that away. And if you think of physical fitness and mental fitness, I just listened to this TED Talk, and he mentioned, if you break a bone in your leg, you go to the doctor and get it fixed. We pay attention to our physical health, dental hygiene, we take care of our teeth.
Absolutely.
And you go to the dentist. But if somebody says like, yeah, I'm really stressed or I'm in fear, typically as parents or grandparents or whoever, your leaders that have been around you, they're like, oh, it's all in your head. Just don't worry about it. And he used this line, like, if you break a leg, you don't go and say, oh, it's all on your leg. Don't worry about it. Just walk it off.
Right.
Toughen up and walk it off. So yeah, it's just new. But if we look around, like domestic violence has increased whatever percentage, it's off the charts.
Absolutely, yeah.
People are losing their jobs still. There's still a bunch of layoffs yet to happen with COVID in the economy. So there's struggles, and people are in fear. And know that if you lead, you're just going to help others open up and feel reassured that life is hard and life is tough, instead of just, our company's crushing it, we're doing amazing things all the time. Like,
sure.
The more real you are, I actually think the better your company will do.
So what's the biggest hurdle you've seen for the modern workplace actually becoming inclusive?
I think the biggest hurdle in the modern workplace in becoming inclusive, I think, comes down to perceptions and fears around your perceptions. Just, again, you and I talked about where you grew up, where I grew up.
Right.
Until we ask those questions, we have different assumptions.
Absolutely. And a huge gap of understanding, too.
Huge gap of understanding. And no one individual is alike. So I think another problem we have is these huge, broad brushes that we paint everybody. Like, oh, you're this, so you're just like everyone else. Where we all have unique experiences. I look at my kids. I have 8 kids. Each one of them has a different perception of what occurred yesterday afternoon at my house. The activities we did, they all had a different lens to view it in. And there's such unique characters in my own family.
Yeah.
In Mapleton, Utah. But, you can easily just say, oh, the Hannas, they have 8 kids in Mapleton, Utah. This is who they are and how they act and how they behave and how they view the world.
As an assumption. And
it's every single person has a unique view. So to me, the more you can recognize that, and again, this comes back to being mentally fit and recognize, like, I want diversity of thought. I want diversity of opinion.
Yeah.
You have to get beyond your own perceptions, your own fears, and reach out and try to bring those different views. And different views may come, it might look like the same as you.
Yeah.
It might not look the same as you. You're not going to realize this until you start asking questions and digging on these different individuals and their viewpoints. But each one of us is absolutely unique.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of fear that comes with branching out and including people that are different from you in thought, and beliefs in all different areas, right? And there's a lot of fear that accompanies with that because it can be an uncomfortable situation. It can lead to uncomfortable conversations. But what values do people miss out on by not doing so?
I don't think I knew how to answer this up until like my executive team. It's so random. And I can't say like, oh yeah, I made that happen. It was all like so strategic. But a lot of these individuals, like, we all come from such diverse religious backgrounds. Like, that was one thing you shared there, and a diversity of thought politically. And to me, as we've created this business, having that, I think is what's going to help make us successful. I think it's what it's made us successful so far. We've all challenged each other. We've used disruption as the status ain't quo. Like, you constantly ask why. Why are we doing this way? And with people coming from different backgrounds, I think that naturally happens.
Absolutely. I agree. So earlier we talked a little bit about domestic violence, right? And a domestic abuse, and how those numbers are skyrocketing, and there's a lot of issues surrounding that currently, right? Where in your mental health program are there any kind of responses or strategic programs that help address these issues or the mental health issues that come along with situations such as domestic violence?
This one is such a sensitive topic. I mean, we didn't address it like directly of, hey, if you're in a situation like this, you need to get out, you need support, you need help. What we did address was that any human you're interacting with, if they're treating you poorly, you're not, and you keep going back to that individual, even at work, if it's your boss,
right,
you have to have self-care.
right.
You have to have self-love.
Be loyal to yourself.
Be loyal to yourself.
Yeah.
And so we hammered on that, and we said, look, being treated unfairly, being treated poorly, or in a domestic violence situation, like, that is not okay. And you can set boundaries to not be around those individuals, and you can set boundaries to get help. Like, if this occurs, I'm calling the police,
Yeah.
or, if this occurs again, like, you set hard boundaries so that you protect yourself. And to me, it's a loving thing to do. It's hard to think, like, in a situation like that I'm setting boundaries, and if you act this way, like with my wife,
Yeah.
and I can use us as an example. I've been condescending, and I wouldn't say that's domestic violence,
Right,
but
right.
that's inappropriate. And so she's set boundaries, and she says, like, I don't deserve to be talked that way, and if that occurs again, you're sleeping on the couch, and
Sure.
if that continues, I don't want you in this house with our kids until you figure this out.
Right.
Where a lot of people will say, oh no, you love them, you forgive them. True love is holding somebody accountable and responsible for their actions.
Absolutely.
And that's what we taught. That's what we went, those are some of the things we went through. Like, even at work, like, there's deadlines, and I recognized that I was enabling people to hit their deadlines, and I wasn't just saying, nope, this was the deadline. Here's the consequence of not hitting that deadline.
Right.
So I was an enabler. And if you look at the drama triangle, there's the peacemaker, the enabler, the rescuer. It's all the same person. There's the persecutor, there's the victim. That's the drama triangle. And so as we went through that, we recognized where you fall in this triangle in different scenarios. We go to all three of them at different times, but that to me is one of the best teachings you can give somebody in any circumstance, not just, in such an extreme situation like domestic violence.
Absolutely. So as we talk about this triangle, right? Well, the drama triangle, is that what we called it?
Yeah.
What would those categories look like, and what shape would that form in a more positive and mentally healthy company situation and environment?
Well, the example I shared earlier of the individual that took responsibility for calling out his peers, or gossiping about an individual, like, he was in the persecutor role. Like, so he went and did that. Now, when he took responsibility, he did the opposite of that drama triangle. So we're teaching people to get out of it as soon as possible, to recognize that. Now, he could have just said, you know what? Yeah, that person didn't do what I said they did, but they're still a jerk, or I still don't like them. Like, he could have justified it.
Absolutely.
And stayed in drama. And that poison at the company could have existed. Instead, he looked inward. And so all of this is about looking inward and eliminating drama from your life, eliminating it from your mind, eliminating it from work, your home life. So these are skills that I think you can take anywhere.
Absolutely. Johnny, thank you so much. I would love to hear some final closing thoughts on kind of your experiences with mental health, and then just a quick wrap up.
I love that this is the last question. So as I've come to really analyze me and recognize how I've been defining myself and, my own self-care, my own self-worth, work has been who I am. Like, I am my job. That's been me for so long. I've put so that definition around me or my degree or whatever it is, like you can easily label yourself.
Yeah.
And so if the company's doing well, I'm doing well. If the company's not doing well, I'm not doing well. And I've looked at other leaders at other companies, and it's like, oh, my business, I don't have what they have, so I am less than, or and I can speak from experience. At a time at Homey, we, in our first couple of years, it was a challenge. It was a struggle. We had flat year-over-year growth, and we couldn't get any funding. And all we ever hear about the success is like you see in Deseret News, like Homey raises $20 million. They
Right.
but you don't see the struggles, and we don't talk about them. We hide those. We're scared. We're in fear of those. But the truth is, like during that time where I couldn't raise money, I had so much fear and uncertainty, and I was questioning myself: am I a good CEO? Am I a good leader? Am I a good provider? As a husband, as a father, I started questioning everything because VCs were turning me down.
Right.
I was telling myself all those stories, and I got to a really dark spot because I was ruminating on those. And this is actually a lot more common than I ever knew. As I've been opening up, other CEOs or other business leaders are like, oh, I felt the same. I've done this, or anybody in the workplace has ruminated on certain stresses, and it's taken you to a dark place. And so I wanted to fast forward my life. I didn't want to take my life, but I wanted to fast forward, and I thought of some dark things of like, could I go into a coma and then wake up and just see what happened? Did we ever raise money?
Yeah.
What happened to the company? And those are ugly, dark thoughts, and they're extremely unhealthy. And had I had a better understanding of mental fitness, I could have been working my mind out prior to it going to that spot and letting it just nosedive.
Yeah.
Things ended up working out. Like we were flat, and then all of a sudden business started to spike, and we were able to raise money, and things ended up going extremely well. And I've talked to other friends who had those same thoughts, and their businesses did tank, and life still went on.
Right.
And they figured something else out, and it was where they needed to be and the lessons they needed to learn. And we just, I know personally I put so much meaning around my role at work and who I was and my degree and all of those things, where coming back to humility, like I recognize I'm enough regardless of the zeros in my company's bank account or in my own bank account. I know that I have worth. My worth is of infinite value. It never changes. Nothing can diminish my worth. And as I've really re-emphasized those points and thoughts in my own life, I've healed from some of my own insecurities.
Absolutely.
I've grown as an individual. And then I've been able to use these stories to help others to open up.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
That's a little glimpse into one of my experiences that's helped me become passionate about this subject.
What is the starting point for leaders, whether you're at the top or the bottom, to deal with mental health issues?
I think the starting point is to have empathy for yourself. To know that you're not weird, you're not abnormal, that so many people, the truth is every single human struggles. Most people just are too proud to admit it, and their own fear is getting in their way. And if you think of that, we have fear, we have insecurity. What are people going to think of me? They're going to categorize me, and that's where this stupid stigma of mental health, it still exists, because we participate in that. And that's where I want to share with everybody all of my struggles. And that mental health hour that I do at my company, I basically just come and confess how I've, treated my wife and kids, and, what crazy was going through my head the previous week, or challenges that I had as a little kid that are still haunting me, some of my previous struggles. So just the more we open up, the more we're real with each other, the better we will feel, because we'll actually heal by opening up and sharing. But it's step one, have compassion and empathy. Just know that what you're going through is hard, and it is a struggle, especially in these times. It's magnified in these times.
Absolutely.
So I would say, try to find somebody that you can talk to, and immediately you'll feel better. You want to find somebody that is a good listener, that cares about you enough to where, you can confide and share whatever you feel is necessary.
Beautiful. Beautiful.